So I feel really, really grateful to be able to host Elisa, Elisa Cairns, non-duality teacher. I've known and been on her retreats, um, and um, it's always transformative to be around her. And as I said, I'm not very good at these introductions, so I'm just going to hand over to you, Lisa, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Ewan. So, from my understanding, people in the group, there's people in the group that maybe don't know so much about non-duality. So I'll just go very slow. Um, so non-duality originally comes from India, although it can maybe be traced back to all religions, but Hinduism is a very old religion, maybe the oldest religion there is. And yeah, and there's lots of different traditions in Hinduism. Hinduism is amazing if you ever feel um, uh, the urge to explore it. Um, and one of them is called wisdom yoga. So you've got all different types of yoga. And it doesn't mean yoga like stretching the body. So wisdom yoga is like yoga of the mind, you could say, or yoga of the thoughts. And traditionally in India, the way it's taught is through something called a guru. I'm not a guru and I'm not Hindu either, but I love Hinduism, I love Buddhism. Yeah, I love all the religions. I think there's beauty in all of them. And the way that it's taught in India is through a guru and through word to yeah, I've forgotten that saying, word to mouth. No, word to ear. I don't know. It's you go to the teacher and the teacher explains it to you and you go repetitively to something called satsang. And um, and then at some point there is a shift in consciousness that happens. And either that person then disappears into nature or disappears, doesn't ever speak about it again, or you end up speaking about it to people. So yeah, that's the tradition in which it comes from. But in the last like 150 years, it's begun to come over to the West. So it's got mixed with Western ideas and psychology. Um, so it changed. Um, but the essence of it is the same. The non-dual message cannot change because it's the same no matter what. Um, yeah, and it's now really changing the last. So I started getting involved in this 25 years ago. And now over the last like 10, 15 years, it's really changing with the internet and having like access to information and to teachers through the internet. And yeah, if you're interested of who my teachers were, my main teachers was a teacher called Roger Castillo and Ramesh Balsaka. And Ramesh's teacher was called Nisargadatta Maharaj. He's quite famous in the non-dual scene. He wrote a book called, or there was a book transcribed for him called I Am That. If you're ever interested, it's a really phenomenal book. You can also listen to audio versions of it on YouTube. So, what is non-duality? So, non-duality is incredibly difficult to speak about. It's not like I can just say it to you in half an hour and then you'll be like, oh, okay, I understand what non-duality is. It's a recognition that who you are isn't who you think you are. And that's a very deep recognition that someone can't teach you. You can use words to as a jumping board, but in the end, it's the deep going inside and investigating who you are. So in our Western society, we are taught from a very young age that we are a body, or we're a soul inside the body. So we're taught that we are a name and we exist as a separate entity inside the body as, Lisa or Ewan. So we're taught that we exist as someone. So from day one, we have a parent calling us a name and saying, Lisa, 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 and aren't you a good girl? Aren't you a bad girl? Or you like pink or you like blue, or all these different things are put on us. And eventually we begin to adopt to that idea. So when we're born, we're not a name, but then we begin to adopt and believe that we are a name and take that name on board. But in Western culture, we don't really think of it like that. We're really convinced that we are our name. Like, I am Lisa. Of course I'm Lisa. Of course I'm Glenn. Like, who else would I be? We don't really contemplate whether we were something before the name we were given and before an identity begins. We never really question that. We assume that we're a name, and then we assume we're kind of a collection of thoughts, even though it doesn't feel like thoughts. So we're a collection of thoughts and ideas that go into time. So, for example, we might think that we are a doctor if we trained as a doctor. We might think that we are a bodybuilder if we've bodybuild, or we may think that we're the way we look, and the way that people respond to us. Or we might think that we're our nationality, that we're British or Welsh or English or Scottish or German or French. So we might believe that we are all these things, and then we believe that we're things we've done. So we climbed Mount Everest, or we did something bad. We ran over the neighbor's cat, and we take all of this on board as an us, as who we are, and we never question if we're something prior to that. And the reason that that's important, I remember when I first began to hear these ideas, I was like, why does that matter? Like, I just want to improve me and be a happy me. Is because in non-duality, what is suggested is that prior to what we think ourselves to be, there is a deep peace that is untouchable, and it's a birthright of all beings. So it's there no matter what. But as we begin to daydream all these things about ourselves, that we're a name, that we're what Eckhart Tolle might call it, an ego, we forget this deep peace that we initially were. So through an example of this deep peace, to try and point it out more clearly, although this isn't something that you can normally get in half an hour session. For me, it was maybe like 8 years before I really began to even touch on it. Like 8 years of like really obsessively listening and meditating and retreats. And then after that, it went quite rapidly. But some people, they listen to it once. Like I had a friend that the first time she went, and she just suddenly got what was being talked about. Really sweet. Um, so so say if you're going to the shops, like so if you're going shopping, and we say like I am going shopping. And we have this idea of who I am as going shopping. So we have an idea that we're our work, that we're our past, that we're our body, that we're our nationality. But if you went shopping and before you went shopping, you had an accident and banged your head and forgot all the things that you think about yourself, and then you went shopping, would you still be going shopping? Like, who would be going shopping? So if you forgot that you were a doctor, if you forgot your training that you're a doctor, if you forgot that you came from Wales or England or France, if you forgot all of that, who would go shopping? The same with the body. Like we have this very invested idea that we're the body. So we think, I'm going shopping and me, I'm the body. But if you had your arm amputated and legs amputated, and you went in a wheelchair with part of your body missing, would you still be going shopping, or would that mean that part of you is not going shopping anymore? Like who is it that goes shopping? So if you had limbs chopped off, if you had plastic surgery and changed your face and you forgot your past, who would be going shopping? Like, so there would still be somebody going shopping. Like if you've ever watched someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, like they completely, depends how far it goes, but they can completely forget who they are. Some, it's different for some. Yeah, it can be really traumatic for some. But my gran, she was very nervous her whole life. And then luckily when she got dementia, she just went to a very peaceful childlike state and she just knew nothing about herself, but she was just there and happy, you know. So you'd take her for ice cream and it was just like a wonder. But who is that I took to get ice cream? It was sort of my gran, but not really my gran. There was behaviors of my gran, but she couldn't remember me and she couldn't remember who she was. So what is it that is in your experience that's always here? So your name can change, your thoughts and memories can change, your body can change, but what is it that doesn't change in the experience? So in non-duality, the suggestion would be consciousness. So consciousness is what doesn't change. But in Western society, what is interlinked is thoughts and consciousness. We don't see them as separate. However, we could have a lobotomy, we could forget who we are, we could have be on drugs and completely stop thinking, but yet there would still be consciousness. So it's not interlinked. We believe it's interlinked, like I am conscious, I am conscious as my thoughts. But is that true? And this isn't something I can teach you. I can suggest things to investigate. It's something you have to investigate in yourself. And what's suggested in non-duality is that consciousness is at peace and at rest. And what isn't at rest is what plays out in consciousness, which is your thoughts, your ideas, your beliefs about yourself. So it's finding that in you that is always innocent, that is always free. And this is what the teaching of non-duality is, which is really super beautiful, I think. Not everyone's allowed their own opinion. Some people might think that's a disaster. That's awful. But it's really down to your own investigation. Who is there prior to what you think about yourself? If you can go to the shops and not be thinking your regular thoughts, if you can take drugs and completely forget about your whole entire life, what is left? What is always with you, no matter wherever you go, no matter whatever experience you have? And that is the fundamentals of who you are. In non-duality, you can even begin to go deeper than consciousness, but we start with consciousness. And the ultimate is love, in like the ultimate teaching is love. But we start with consciousness because it's such a far out subject. Otherwise, where would we even begin to start? And so why it's called non-duality is when you begin to recognize consciousness. So it's not a thought that understands it, it's a recognition that there is consciousness it prior to every experience you have, and it's always here no matter what. When you really recognize the consciousness, not as a thought, not as something you know, but as a remembering of something that's always been there, then you begin to see that consciousness is really magical, that it's not actually the way you think it is. It isn't something that belongs to you. It's a universal consciousness. It's a non-divided consciousness. And it's something that everybody has, that we're all we're all yeah, we're all, don't want to say using, but I don't know a better word. We're all it's looking through all of us. So so the way that it goes with non-duality is it isn't that you just suddenly get it, although there's always that possibility. It's a repetition of listening to the subject. And at some point, we call it awakening. Like you wake up to realize that you were living in a dream of yourself and that there was something that you were prior to that dream of yourself, prior to the thoughts about yourself, prior to the ideas about yourself, your likes, your dislikes, your seeking, your wants, your whole life, your roles, being mother, being father. And it might sound really horrifying, but it's actually an absolute relief that you were never a body mind mechanism. You were never limited. You were never something that was born and going to die. You're never something that has failed or done something disastrous. You were always that which was prior to the habits and conditions and the thought processes of the person. It's a really intense subject, though. Um, yeah. Uh, yeah. So right now, who are you without thinking? Where are you without thinking? So there is thoughts about, I did this today, I did that today, I like this, I don't like that. And where and what are you if you don't think about yourself? What remains? Yeah, so it's really confusing subjects, and I'm not really sure um, uh, how that's being heard. So if you've got any questions or comments, you're welcome to share them, and then we can sort of use that as a jumping board.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi. Um, yeah, thank you. I completely get what you mean about it's yeah, people are going to get it when they get it, I guess. And I'm not sure that I have or I haven't because there's like too many conflicting things for me to say one way or the other, which is annoying. um, because I've had some experiences that I thought led me to understanding what it feels like to be removed from the body, but still conscious of presence.
Mm.
Um, uh, and that got us explained away a little bit by somebody who said to me about human cellular memory. So, and that goes into saying that every cell in a human or in anything has its own conscience or is consciousness. And when that's a little bit trippy to kind of consider, But it did kind of give me some kind of closure of sorts around the experience that I had.
Yeah.
But then when the scientific mind comes in and the thoughts try to take control, I have to wonder that because DNA is a scientifically proven thing, that how much influence is there from ancestral lineage? Like, so that's where for me where the conflicts come in my own thoughts around it, because
Yeah.
I was happy to accept that we're all consciousness experiencing itself through matter, whatever
Yeah.
that matter might be, either a human or an animal or a rock or a plant. It's just consciousness realizing itself. And I guess there could be some truth in that. And I suppose some of the traits that we pick up through like ancestral lineage is where that's just the kind of human self doing, like, yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully, yeah,
Doing its
just
thing.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So in um Hinduism, so I'm greatly influenced by Hinduism and Buddhism in the way that I teach. So they believe in previous lives, so reincarnation, but they don't believe in the reincarnation of like a soul or something. They see it, well, it depends what tradition you get involved in. But the ones that I was involved in, they explain it as the rebirth of habits and conditions. And I always felt very comfortable with that because, like, if you look at animals, so if you ever breed dogs or anything, like you're sort of like picking out habits and conditions of those bodies, and then you're sort of breeding them, and you kind of like get very similar characters as you breed them.
Yeah.
And um and so I kind of see it like that, but I also see it a bit more, I suppose, esoteric in the sense that yeah, yeah, I suppose I believe in previous lives. So whatever you are now is a result of all previous lives, but not a personal previous life. It's like the previous lives of humanity, which we kind of all are. Like we're not really separated out from them. And so at the moment, you're looking through a body mind mechanism, which has been made up right from the very beginning of time, and it's been influenced from right from the beginning of the time. And I see that as the previous lives. Like it's like you as consciousness are looking through this body that is apparently evolving through time. Because whatever happened in your parents' life will have deeply affected you and your grandparents, and so you are a result of all of that. And then whatever's experienced in this life will deeply change it for the next generation, which is you in a way.
Mm.
Like like you're not separate from my perspective, like we're not separate from our environment, we're not separate from everything else. It's like a bundle of energy. I see it like a kaleidoscope, like we're constantly changing into ourselves. Like, so what was an animal then dies and then becomes the tree, and it's all affecting each other. And then the tree grows fruit, and then that goes into the animal, and then the animal goes into the ground, and
Mm.
it's like this never-ending cycle. And then each animal that changes slightly then affects the next apparent generation. And then we are who we truly are is the consciousness looking through these body mind mechanisms. Another way I like to explain it is if you had a light and then you had a paper bag and you pierced 20 holes in the paper bag and you put the paper bag over the light and you've got 20 lights coming out of the bag, but it's one light originally, but it looks like it's 20 lights coming out of the bag now because there's 20 holes. And I kind of see it like that, like the holes are the human being. So it's one consciousness looking out of these multiple eyes, having an apparent private experience, but it's not really a private experience. It's just given the illusion of the private experience. And then every time one whole dies or one body dies, then it looks through another one, and then another one, and another one. But it's all us in a way, all of it. So whatever happens in your life, in any of our lives, then deeply affect the next lives, and that is the rebirth. That is the reincarnation, and that is kind of, for me, the way I see karma as well. I don't mean karma like you did something bad, so you'll get something bad. I just mean karma as in it's like, the next generation are gonna have the karma of our trash, you know, coming, in the next generations coming, they've got the karma, but it's kind of us. We're kind of passing it on to ourselves because, from my perspective, because I don't, it's one consciousness looking through.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah, my own personal experience has been that, like, in later years, that we've got like a mortal soul that belongs, where is purposeful to the human self, but an eternal spirit that kind of over is experiencing it through that means. So
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. Yeah.
Listening to Lisa, it always happens. It's like, when you go into the fridge or the freezer to get ice for a drink or something, and you have to put it under warm water, and you hear the crackling, so you could release the block of ice. I can literally feel my brain like defrosting around the edges, and I'm, the block of ice is stuck hard in there. It will come down one day, I'm sure. But just listening to you, it's like that. It's like, just to give you some context. So this course, what everybody here is trained or training to deliver this course, Coming to Our Senses, which is a new approach to mindfulness. So it's using applied theater and from a non-duality perspective. So usually in mindfulness, there's something called the hot cross bun. So what's happening in a given moment are thoughts, emotions and feelings. No, that's that one. Thoughts, emotions and feelings, physical sensations in the body, and kind of phenomenon or sensations. So that represents, in Buddhism, that represents it. So in each session we use these metaphors to help people to reframe their experience of it. So thoughts are like balloons. They're empty, but we're always keeping them up. So rather than actually turning our attention to focus on the breath and the body, we first of all learn to realize that we don't have to keep them up. We can just relax the hand. So every session we dynamize these metaphors so they're not just concepts, and through that the participants get a glimpse. That's the aim, is to get this glimpse, and it's because they've had those glimpses they're curious to do the practices, rather than it being like this homework that you have to do. It has to be those glimpses that lead to that curiosity, so nothing is forced. And it's very much influenced by my contact with you, Lisa. So I'm very grateful to that. And then we get into this Mobius strip here. So I don't think the wheel of suffering, samsara, is a wheel. I think it's a Mobius strip, because it just feels continuous. We have there's this sense of continuity in the self. We meet ourselves coming the other way every 3 seconds, and that's the kind of illusion of continuity. And it's not until you fall off that loop or it breaks that then that you can get a glimpse. And the thing that drives us around this loop are the 3 poisons in Buddhism: the craving, the avoidance, and the ignorance. And we go into that as well during the course. And at the moment, I've delivered it now about 8 to 10 times, and it's really helping people. It really helps them. And what they say is like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. So the people are traveling lighter, which is why these sessions are called traveling lighter. And they haven't yet started to join these courses, these drop-ins, as much as I'd like. But we're going to change the time to 7 o'clock, and I'm hoping they will join. But you know, it's really good to start this with the people who will be delivering the course when we scale up. So I don't know, is there a question in there?
But I started in Buddhism, that was my avenue into non-duality, was through Buddhism and through mindfulness. I used to practice counting the breath. You know, every time you breathed in, you counted 1, and then you'd the next breath you'd do 2, and you do this all the way up to 10, and then start again. And then I also did another one called Metta Bhavana. There was 2 that I got taught in the beginning. And the first time I meditated, I firstly couldn't believe how crazy my mind was. Like, I didn't really realize. But secondly, I know this is going to sound really weird, but the realization that I thought, that's such a weird thing to say, but I didn't really realize that, you know, if I was angry at somebody, that it was a thought, and that if there was another thought in play, my response and my feelings would be different. And that was really striking to me, learning that like the way we think is so deeply related to the way we feel, and that it's not like a given that we have to have these thoughts and that we have to have these emotions and that we're lumbered with them and that it's our, you know, our lot in life. There's like an alternative, but it takes a lot of strength, because it means having to confront things, you know, because it's kind of easy to be angry with someone, but it sort of feels easy in the moment. If somebody annoys you, you know, to shout at them or to be rude to them, it kind of feels like an easy way out of that anger, because you can kind of release it and then you're not taking any responsibility for it. But when you begin to investigate your thinking, then you're confronting what you're feeling in every moment, which is really confrontational at points, because it's like the opportunity that you can actually have a really different experience. Yeah, and then learning about the cravings as well, I found really helpful. But that again took me quite a few years to be comfortable with meditation and be comfortable to sit in silence and be comfortable with my mind going crazy, or my mind saying ridiculous things, or having really uncomfortable feelings and not running to solve it by eating food or watching TV or speaking to a friend. Like, being able to hold that and feel really angry at someone and just sit there and notice that it can pass, and I don't have to do anything about it. You know, I don't have to act it out. I don't have to get something from someone, that I can hold it. And then when you begin to be able to hold your feelings and your thoughts, your whole experience begins to transform, because you're no longer afraid of your thoughts and feelings. And then if you're no longer afraid of your thoughts and feelings so much, then you're not so afraid of the world, because what you experience of the world is what you think of the world. So it kind of like really can transform like your relationship with the world as well, the dynamics. But it's like a process. Like, even in the end, that you can begin to really question that idea of who you are in the process. Initially, it's a process. You get into it, and it takes time to settle the system, to recognize, okay, this is a thought. Like, I'm sitting here burning in fury with my partner because they've, I don't know, left a mess or something, or they've done something. But these are thoughts and feelings that aren't necessarily the truth. And they're not something I necessarily have to act on. And that there is a peace inside of me that's not dependent on them, not dependent on making them feel guilty or getting them to behave in a certain way. There is something else which I can begin to turn to. Doesn't require anything. And this was revolutionary for me. I feel so grateful that I came across Buddhism and these ideas and concepts.
Thanks, Lisa. I was just thinking when you were speaking then that I think the thing for me, such as spaciousness, that kind of things of the world are less pressing and less sort of demanding of myself, after a certain amount of, like you say, disengagement of the self from, from all the doings of the world, really. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Interesting stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's so much doing of the world, like especially now with social media and the ability to have a phone in your hand. It's like you can go into your home, which used to be a place of rest, and now can carry on being a place of work and socialization
Mm.
and entertainment. It's
Yeah, and everything's designed to keep us going, isn't it, really? All that stuff
yeah,
is absolutely designed to keep us hooked. And
yeah,
it does feel to me as though, yeah, I mean, it's just a sign of my age, really, but it feels as though the world is changing again, and like you say, almost like the way humans think about themselves, or perhaps don't think about themselves as much. Anyway, that's something else. But
yeah.
yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Have you heard of the telepathy tapes? It's a
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah, it's like it's going crazy. Loads of people have recommended it to me, and it fascinates me because I've worked with non-speaking autistic people. I wish I'd listened to it before I had. But if you haven't heard about it, they're discovering that non-verbal autistic people, savants, are communicating telepathically. They meet on a place called the Hill, and they talk about consciousness. They just say, "Well, we're just consciousness," and they've and part of their suffering is that nobody thinks there's anything happening inside. They just treat them as idiots when they're incredibly intelligent and can go into different dimensions, some of them, and all this kind of thing. But they also say that thought is really important in some of them. Thought is what creates the world in some senses. And that's kind of a paradox in non-duality, isn't it? Because I've just described thoughts as being essentially empty and and but they do have some kind of importance. They do create the world that we're experiencing. So can you say something about that
Yeah.
kind of paradox, that thoughts are important and yet they're not?
Yeah. How to say that? So depends a little bit how you refer to thought. But so there's different ways that you could answer that, because you could answer it like thoughts are creating everything, as in if I had really low self-esteem and was beating myself up all the time for everything I did, that would deeply reflect in my reality. I would pick people to be around that maybe I don't want to be around, but maybe make me feel safe. Or I would pick jobs that maybe I don't like, but make me feel safe. So I would kind of reflect it in my environment the whole time. If I was having low self-esteem, if I was having lots of self-hatred, my environment would reflect that back. So you've got this level in which you can say your reality is created by your thoughts. It's like dependent on the way that you see yourself is dependent on the apparent choices that you're going to make and the life decisions you're going to make. So if you've got lots of self-hatred, then that's going to reflect in your surrounding. Also, if you've got lots of fear, it's going to reflect in your surrounding. So you've got that level of like thoughts create your reality. You've of you consciously or unconsciously, you are going to navigate towards your internal dialogue of yourself and the way that you see yourself. And that's a lot of what Western therapy now talks about. Well, not all of it, but there's a lot of like looking at traumas and looking at unconscious and looking at ways in which you can retell the narrative of you to create a different environment. But then you've got a deeper level of thought where, like something like the Course in Miracles would say that the whole world is created by thought. And I don't know the answers to all of this in the end. Like, I just know in the end that I am. Like, I am. There is this life happening. There's this consciousness happening. There's this experience happening. So these tend to be something that in some way can only be philosophical, but they can challenge the way in which you look at yourself and you look at life. So yeah, maybe I can best tell it about experiences. So if you deeply go into consciousness, so if you remember, like I said about this light and then the bag on top, and then this light comes out, and like the body mind is like the whole, and then you've got this light that comes through. And if you deeply go into consciousness and you go beyond the body mind mechanism, and you go back to this big light inside the bag, you can't perceive reality in any way. I know that sounds really weird, but you can't perceive that you're sitting in a room because you're so detached from the body mind mechanism. You can't perceive that you're alive. You can't perceive that there's other people in the room. Like, you need a body mind mechanism in order for this world to be created. And the body mind mechanism has a thought system in it. It has intelligence in it. You could say that whole of life in a way has intelligence in it. So in a way, the whole world is created by these thoughts, like the idea that you are sitting in a room, or the idea that you exist as somebody. And if you detach from that, then the whole world disappears, because you can't know that the world exists. You can only know that in thought. So when things like the Course in Miracles say the whole world is thought, I can really understand that the whole world is thought. But maybe not like thought that you're thinking like, I am good or I am bad, but like this deep level, deeply ingrained in the bodies thought. Yeah, so there's two different versions to the answer. There's the one where we're kind of creating our reality by the way in which we experience ourselves. And then the deeper one where if we totally disidentify with this body mind mechanism and dissolve into that consciousness, then yeah, you cannot know anything. There is just isness, and you cannot know anything at all. You need a brain that thinks to interpret, to function. I don't know if that answers your question, Ewan. I maybe went too extreme.
No, not at all. No, it's
I'm not
lovely.
very good at keeping it simple.
No, it's lovely. It's just, feeling maybe this ice cube is never going to come out then, because when I die. But it's nice to feel the crackling of it in there. And it makes me think of, I think it's Ramana who said, if you go the way of thought, you enter a maze from which you will never escape. And it's kind of like, the Gordian knot, it's yeah, you can start trying to unravel it, but there's a sword that can cut through it. And it's listening to yourself that makes that sword. It's kind of like, that's not who I am. It's happening, it's here, but it's not who I really am.
It's not, yeah, that's the most important part. It's not who I am.
Mm.
And it's not truth. It's not reality, like whatever you think. So
Mm.
say if we now thought, even like the idea that this is green grass outside my window. It's actually weeds. You just can't see it. But maybe if you had the thought that that's green grass, it's mostly dandelions. Like even that, I mean, what is green? Like, I mean, that is really complex. My partner is an artist, and yeah, color is a really funky thing. But it's all about the way that the light reflects off something that gives it color, that something doesn't inherently have color. That is crazy. Looks like we got some artists there. So, I mean, like the even the idea, like, so something that we think is fact, like the grass is green, like even this is something that we can just deconstruct. But everything, like even if I said, so where this place where I am in the south of France, a lot of the trees grow bondi because there's lots of rocks in the soil. So even if I said like that tree is small compared to what? Like if I put a real bondi out there, it would be tall. So comparison is such like our language derives from comparison, and comparison is like a undefined thing. Like something is tall because something else is small, something is good because something else is bad. And also with green, like we know green, the comparison to the other colors. This thought is there anything that you can think that is a truth? There are things that are more in line with what's seemingly happening here. Like I am speaking through a computer, but even that we can break down. Like all the different ideas of what is a computer, what makes up a computer, who decided to call it a computer, who named it a computer, and what would it be to somebody in a different country with a different language. Like it's thought is an amazing tool, but it is the greatest illusion there is. It is an illusion. And in non-duality, we go really extreme. So it's like the yoga of the mind. We're bending the mind, but you're bending the mind so you can go beyond the mind and you can notice something that isn't mind. And then in the end, it's not that you go all the way back into the consciousness and you can't think at all. It's that they come together. You recognize at all times that you are this still present, peaceful consciousness. And then everything else is playing out in front of you. But it's not happening to a you as a person, as you as a thought anymore, which is what creates the suffering, which is where the seeking comes from and the craving. When you believe everything is about you, then the craving starts, the craving for pleasure, to get a pleasure, to make life better, to make this experience feel better. But when you've got this deep peace inside of you, then pleasure and pain lose their hold over you. It's nice to have pleasurable things. It's nice to have sunshine. It's nice to eat nice foods, but they're not rescuing you anymore. They're not this dream of something that you'll arrive at anymore because you know that deep peace in you. So non-duality goes really extreme at breaking down thoughts, but only to reveal something deeper that is there. Something that's there in everybody. It's the birthright of everybody. This is what I loved about Buddhism and non-duality, is it's not a God out there that I have to please. It's not this judgment of my behavior. It's something that I have to find in me. That's not, I'm trying to perform for a God to get into heaven. It's something I can find in me and in everybody. Like everybody can find it. The worst people and the best people. It's exclusive to nobody, excluding nobody.
Something that in the telepathy tapes they talk about these people who can't communicate only telepathically. They say they can only communicate, or it's only heard by people who have opened their heart to them. And I think that the heart has something to do with it, doesn't it? I know that is it Ramana who says it's not the physical heart, but it's on the right side, more on the right side of the ribs, but it's a contraction here that's released, and that's what's lovely about delivering this course, because it works with a group dynamic and they're all colleagues who work in hospitals and things, just being able to go from here down to here, something
Yeah.
shifts.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the next part of the teaching is the love part. Like that's the ultimate goal. But so actually in non-duality, consciousness isn't the end goal. It's actually the merging of consciousness and what we call I amness. And the I amness is love. And it's the merging and the union of them. And then it goes to this impersonal beingness, that, yeah, impersonalness. And so in every experience, we have consciousness, which is this alive presence, this alive watching, conscious, we are conscious. But we also, in every experience, have a feeling that we are, that we exist. I am. And yeah, it's the union of them both is the freedom. And the I am is found in the heart, but this is yeah, feeling I am. It's hard to explain what that is. And yeah, it's the release of it being personal. It's the release of it being contracted inside of the heart, and the release of that into love. Yeah, but that's I mean, that's you have to go right back to the beginnings. You have to go right back to recognizing that your consciousness, but you also have to recognize the I am, which is prior to I am good, I am bad, I am right, I'm wrong. It's that initial sense of being alive. My friend actually got my mum. My mum's not interested in spirituality or non-duality at all. And my friend got her to realize the I am very quickly because she was turning 70. And she was like, oh, I really don't feel 70. And it's really shocking when I look in the mirror, like I really am not 70. And my friend was like, he jumped in. He was like, you're not, are you? You're that same inside. You feel like the same you as when you were like 20 or 15 or 10. She was like, I do. And then I look in the mirror and it's shocking. And he was like, so you've got this like this essence which is timeless, which feels like it hasn't changed, even all their life experiences, and just like, I do. And it's that which is the I am, that which feels ageless, this I am prior to all the experiences that might have been heavy or difficult, and in the I am, it contains love. And when you deeply go into it, it's then releasing of that from the heart. And then this is when it goes into union with the consciousness and they come into union. And that's the love side. The love. People describe it differently though. So you've got some teachers that describe it as first you wake up to the consciousness and then you travel down to the heart. And the consciousness in non-duality is considered the masculine element and the I am is considered the feminine. It's this union of the two. It's the freedom. But it's a lot of ideas like to teach in one go. Like, so normally, depending on who I'm working with, you go for different angles. So you go for the I am or whether you go for the consciousness part.
Thank you, Lisa. That's coming up to the hour. A perfect ending, I think, unless anybody has a question. But
I'm
thank
not
you.
going to ask a question. I'm just going to say I thought of about 1,000 questions, but then they sort of evaporated. So apologies for being silent. But every time I started to formulate a question, it changed. So, but thank you very much. It was really, really interesting. So thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.